want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes,
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Blurson at Blursville.
Futurama.
Good evening. This is TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show, sure it is Birds of Prey, the TV series, brought to you by the good people at Flash Filmworks, Talon Robbins Productions, Warner Brothers Television, and the WB Network. Joining me tonight to talk about this show, which was based on the Birds of Prey comic book by Jordan B. Gorfinkel and Chuck Dixon, is the one and only Alexis Hejna from Honeysuckle Rose Creations. How do you do, madam?
Yeah, favorite show. I need a lot more caffeine for this.
Yeah. This thing goes off a cliff pretty quickly. Like, there was interest in it, and I think it had an interesting enough concept, and between episodes 1 and 13, initial interest in the show goes off a cliff. The show itself goes off a cliff, and then by the end of it, and I don't know if I wrote this to you specifically or somebody else, or I just put it on Twitter, but I was like, that series finale is a beautiful disaster.
Yeah, I think you actually said Mia Sarah goes off a cliff.
Yes, Mia Sarah just suddenly forgets how to act. Because apparently the thing about this is that all of these folks have been in other things and had careers up until relatively recently. I'd have to look again, but I was going through everyone's Wikipedia page. Most of the stuff is television, but I think they've all been in movies at some point or another. They've all been in known stuff. And I think they're trying to...
The girl playing Dinah is now cast as Alice in the Batwoman series.
Right. Yeah, she's great in that.
Which is good because she sucks in this.
Yeah, her character is terrible, and she gives a terrible performance. Like, nothing about that character works in this show. But
I'm just going to say it. Looking at Helena and Dinah, I didn't see superheroes. I saw all the girls in high school who I just wanted to punch so badly.
Not fans of the goth kids, were you?
No. Those were not the goth kids. No, I actually got along fairly well with the goth kids. I was a clique jumper. I was friends with like multiple people in different cliques. No, those were not the goth girls. Those were the popular petty girls.
Oh, okay.
The ones who constantly bounced their head back and forth like they were being clever. The ones who every time they shot what they thought was a good one-liner, they suddenly gave you the look of, oh yeah, I said that.
Yeah, we're going to break this down and talk about it, but if I can just give sort of an overview of this show in terms of how it's presented, I think Ashley Scott, Dina Meyer, Mia Sarah are giving their level best performances. I think they're trying with this show in earnest, and I think there's a good idea that was executed poorly in this show, if we're being fair, but it
doesn't help that this movie just screams the 90s are trying to die.
Yeah, this TV show is definitely a product of its time. I believe this comes out in 2002, so we are in the baby 2000s here. This starts on October 9th of 2002, so right at the beginning of the fall television season. And it and normally these shows, you know, the WB would go away, and I think I don't remember if it merges into becomes the CW or not. For the sake of this conversation, it does. But so all of those like CW shows, most of which go 22, 23 episodes, which is the standard length of the average primetime television show. Though some get half-year show orders, so they die at around 12, 13 episodes. It's only in the streaming years that we've had these 10-episode seasons or 8-episode seasons or whatever. But this one dies at about the mid-season mark with 13 episodes. So it goes from August 9, 2002 to February 19th, 2003. And there are some shows we do on here when we go back and do like a retro review, which is what this is tonight. And we're doing it because of the Birds of Prey movie.
We're trying to be trending, folks.
Always. Synergy. That is the name of the game here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. But, had there not been an NXT show this Sunday, we'd have done one of the Sonic shows. How about that, huh? Next week, I mean. I'm
trying to figure out if we dodged a bullet or not. I mean, let's see. You're talking about this versus talking about the adventures of Sonic.
Anyway, the point being that this is definitely a product of the 2000s, the early 2000s, the late 90s. I said to you when you started watching this before I did. I think your husband got you the DVD set because for some odd reason you folks don't believe in streaming things.
We actually couldn't find a decent stream. Well, okay, I do not have DC Unlimited. That's
DC
like the Universe, whatever. That's the one streaming service we don't have.
Okay.
I didn't have access to it, and we're
trying. Can I ask why? I mean, you're so much into comic book stuff, and you especially are, like to haunt me to do a lot of the animated stuff. Why don't you own it?
I don't know. I guess we just kind of sat down and looked at all the streaming services we have. We do Amazon Prime, we have Netflix, we have Hulu, we have Disney Plus, and we just kind of looked at what was going to be on DC Universe, and we couldn't, find anything that was like, oh yeah, let's get it for that,
Oh, you're missing out. You need to watch Doom Patrol and Swamp Thing.
I've seen a few episodes of Doom Patrol that have aired via other sources.
Okay.
Props to Brendan Fraser. Glad to see him getting everything back in order and making a comeback. He deserves it. Doom
Patrol, and you can hear that in the archives on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Now, firmly a member of the W2M network. Doom Patrol was excellent. It's one of my favorite shows of last year. But back on track. So you don't have DC Universe. Forgot where I was going with that. Why did I ask you why don't you have this service?
Because you mentioned that I bought the DVD.
There it is. Thank you.
Well, in all fairness, we found a source on eBay who had the DVD, bought the box set in mint condition for like $7.
Yeah. So yes, you would. Now I remember. Now I remember where I was going with this. So you had said to me you had started watching it well before I did. And you messaged me about it, and you were like, "Oh, this show is pretty dated." And then I sat down and I finally watched the pilot, and I was like, "Wow, this is Dawson's Creek with vigilantes."
Yeah, I think I said it's like Dawson's Creek meets the Ben Affleck Daredevil.
Yup. and look, is it all bad? No, there are some bright spots in it. I think the Dina Meyer, who plays Barbara Gordon, Batgirl / Oracle, I actually think she does a pretty good job. She's a very attractive woman. I think she brings a lot of personality to the role. I think she's limited by what was asked of her. I think she's capable of having done a little bit more with that, but she was probably muted in direction for this.
I've seen Starship Troopers too many times. That's dizzy.
But I for the most part, I liked her in this. Here's the problem, though. While Ashley Scott's a fine enough actress, this Helena Kyle portrayal / Huntress, not a good character.
No.
She is as unlikable as the day is long, and she'd probably be the worst character on here. Except Rachel Skarsten's Dinah Redmond / Lance is even worse.
The only character that I actually enjoyed seeing was Gideon. The head of the bar, the metahuman who can...
Oh, yeah, okay.
And partially that is because that actor is on Supernatural, where he plays a prophet who is later revealed to actually be God. Like God in hiding.
So I'm wondering if they knew this was getting canceled at 13 episodes, because when they shot that finale and they have him, there's that great scene at the end where Mia Sara, who plays Harley Quinn,
in the loosest of terms imaginable.
Well, they were trying to surprise you that she was like Dr. Harleen Quinzel, and you're like, oh, is she full on Harley Quinn yet, or what?
Yeah, it's like anyone who's read the comics or has seen, the Mad Love episode of Batman the Animated Series knows who Dr. Quinzel is. I mean, for God's sake, Harleen Quinzel, it's not that big of a jump.
Yeah, they're not hiding anything here. They're not being cute. But for some odd reason, this show just assumes you're a moron, or assumes you think that she hasn't done the full Harley Quinn transition yet. So, so Mia Sara's playing a pretty low key version of this character until the end, where she goes full goose bozo, and she's like, I was the author of all your pain, James. And it's just actually, I can't tell if it's that or if it's suddenly Zemo, but yeah, at the very end, she just flips her wig, and she enacts her plan to get metahuman powers, and she has basically the same powers as the Purple Man. She can just tell people to do whatever, and they'll do it. So she looks
until they get contact lenses, because heaven forbid that they disrupt how pretty Helena Kyle is.
Sure. So and I know we're skipping around here, but it doesn't matter. So you mentioned Gideon, and so she says to Gideon, and this I thought was hilarious: "Lose your mind," because sure, common parlance, lending itself to actual brain damage is a thing, even in the comic book world.
I would say, who would have thought "lose your mind" meant gibbering, acting like an idiot, and barking like a dog?
Yeah, he leans into it really, and that's what I was getting to. He's hilarious in that last episode, as if to say, it's like that scene in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where you just have the director not even looking at the actors, and he's like counting money in the chair.
Gus Van Sant.
Yes, it looks as if the director on that last episode was like, do whatever you want, and so he's like, well, I'm supposed to be crazy in this. I don't know. I'll bark like a dog and then beat my chest like King Kong. That'll be funny. It was very amusing. So the initial trailers for the show used footage of the Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer from Batman Returns bits, indicating that at one point in development, the show was going to share a continuity with the Tim Burton Batman films. And God is my witness, they try. The guy that they got to play the Joker in the scene where they show her being shot by the Joker, a la The Killing Joke, looks nothing like Jack Nicholson. So,
voiced by Mark Hamill, though.
Very good pickup. So anyway, let's break this down. The series is set in New Gotham, several years after it has been apparently abandoned by Batman. Because in all of these shows, since they can't have Batman, he's always he's never dead. He's just always running away. In the absence, Oracle, who is Barbara Gordon, the aforementioned shot Batgirl, and the Huntress, Helena Kyle, have taken over his war on crime. The two are joined by Dinah Redmond, a telepath. She does not have the canary cry. Again. After she assists them in defeating Larry Ketterly. Alfred Pennyworth, who serves Helena, and as she is heir to the Wayne estate, which she only recently finds out in the show.
But she says she doesn't want to touch her daddy's money, but I'd struggle to figure out how else they're funding their little operation.
On a teacher's salary.
Yeah, no, there is an episode where she says, they say, what is it like? You're heir to the Wayne Foundation. You're worth so much money. Why are you doing this? She goes, I have daddy issues. I don't want to touch any of my dad's money. It's like, okay, you're a bartender. Barbara Gordon is a high school teacher. You guys live in a massive clock tower. You have state-of-the-art technology. You know, I'm pretty sure you're touching Daddy's money to fund this.
The impression that I got was that she's living off the money she inherited from her mother, who was the Catwoman, who, in various portrayals, was also fairly wealthy after a life of burglaries and break-ins and whatnot. So,
but if we're going with that, it's the Selena Kyle from the Batman Returns, then that's not the same story arc.
No, it is not. Well, we don't know what happened after that movie, do we? We never saw her again. She could have hit the lotto.
Sure, why not? But no, there is a story arc in the DC Comics continuity where a massive earthquake hits Gotham, and for a period of time we have to deal with what is effectively no man's land, where the villains essentially carve up parts of Gotham for themselves. This takes place after that, and when Gotham has, I guess, been rebuilt or something, hence why it's New Gotham. And yet, even though this was clearly, not that long ago from when Batman was around, the ideas of this mass vigilante who dressed up like a bat are just unfounded rumors, and, oh, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Who would ever do it? The continuity and timeline in this series makes absolutely no sense. Because if it's recent enough for them to have recovered from that, and for Helena to only be... She's in her 20s, easily. It's like, how is Batman just a forgotten relic? He has to have still been active within the last 20 years.
You're putting a lot of thought into a show that was on the WB, which had Dawson's Creek on it, and oh god, what was the show with Mark Paul Gosselaar? It was on for like a hot minute.
I know Mark Paul Gosselaar from Saved by the Bell and Dead Man on Campus.
He did around the same time as Dawson's Creek. He did a show that lasted, I think, a season, if that.
No clue.
It was very similar in nature. Okay, so that's your setup. Essentially, Oracle and Huntress are doing the vigilante thing, where they run into Dinah Redmond, who ends up joining the trio. But in this show, she's a teenager, and so she's kind of like adopted by Barbara. And so there's a lot of teen angst and drama as she goes to high school and learns to develop her metahuman powers, which are, again, not a canary cry, but telekinesis and precognitive dreams. And she's a touch telepath. And she's last of the Red Hot Tabletop Clockers. Then you have...
Thank you, Plucky Duck.
And you have the daughter of Batwoman and Batman and Catwoman, who is also a half metahuman. Sure. She has cat-like ability.
Yeah, didn't you know Catwoman was a metahuman who had cat-like senses?
Yes, the people who developed the Burton / Schumacher Batman movies are idiots. Just terrible. Because here's the thing, and I say that because, you sit here and you're like, okay, well, the first Batman movie was really, really good, so we should do another one. Who are we thinking about doing in this one? Well, how about the Penguin and Catwoman? Well, why are they the Penguin and Catwoman? I don't know. Let's make the Penguin. Let's make the Penguin a mutant penguin. Let's give Catwoman cat powers. It's like no. The Penguin was a guy wearing a suit who was short and fat, and he kind of waddled because he was so fat, and he had a long nose. But he was essentially a crime boss who, again, looked like a fat penguin in the suits that he wore. And then Catwoman was Catwoman because she was a cat burglar.
Yeah, I hate to say it, and oh my god, I really hate to say it, but if we're talking about how her mother was a metahuman with cat powers, then we're no longer in the Batman Returns continuity. We're in the Halle Berry Catwoman continuity.
God, I hope so. That movie's amazing.
Male academia.
So, yes, she has cat-like abilities inherited from her mother. Enhanced agility, strength, healing, and a sixth sense for danger. She has spidey sense.
And this weird ability to just suddenly drop down by raising her arms.
What she does really, really well is jump from rooftop to rooftop. There's a lot of that in this show.
Amongst the, oh my God, shoot me now CGI.
Yeah, well, it was the early 2000s. You have to forgive them. On a television budget.
No, I don't.
On a television budget, madam.
It still looked like crap. I'm sorry. I get it if you have a low budget, but you do not draw attention to that low budget with horrible CGI.
I mean,
there were tons of other shows that made it work with the lower budget.
I mean, it's better than Superman 4.
The films I shot in college are better than Superman 4. And if you don't believe me, I will show you a video that we did recreating Orson Welles' War of the Worlds.
So, we're not going to do this episode by episode because the structure of the show is kind of a monster / crime of the week. A lot of the show is a will they, won't they, with two terrible characters that I'm not interested in, and they're two of the major legs of this show, their relationship, and it never works, which is why the show kind of falls apart. And that's Helena Kyle's relationship with Detective Reese. I don't know what you thought about that, but one, I already don't find Helena to be an interesting or likable character, and then they put her with this detective whose only note is "grr, vigilantes, but ooh, you're pretty." And then they try to shove them together as a couple, and there's just none of it that draws me in. I found myself being utterly disinterested when they were on the screen together, and they're on the screen together a lot.
The actor playing Detective Reese later would get a long-running stint on Criminal Minds, and he's good on that show. So whenever I watched him, it was just like, oh, God, how many years until we can actually take you as a respectable actor? Because it isn't working here, darling. And I hate to admit it, but even on Criminal Minds, there's a long-running joke about how he is so sexy. And there's a joke about him constantly flirting with, one of their computer analyst girls, and she talks about how she puts extra cameras around so she can watch him do his things. He is so gorgeous and everything. Obvious. I don't know how else to put it. It's so weird.
And so I'm going to try to balance this by saying some positive things here. Again, Dina Maya as Barbara Gordon, I actually like. She has a relationship in this, too, which she kind of pushes the guy away through most of the series, and then suddenly they're together, and he's introducing her to the parents who are, prejudiced against handicapped folks, handy-capable. She's quite capable. And so, it's never going to work. She don't got no legs. All right.
Handy capable and probably the most stylish electronic wheelchair ever.
That thing was a beaut. But what did you... Let's break this down. What did you think of Dina Meyer as Barbara Gordon?
She wasn't bad, but I don't get why they made her a teacher. Barbara Gordon in the comics, after she was attacked by the Joker and forced to take on the role as Oracle, basically got a job working, off the record for Gotham PD. She just worked on the computer system for them. And that's what allowed her to constantly get into all the information for Batman. And frankly, I think that would have been a lot more interesting. Because
they had to, look, this is television, see? You got to get them outside. You have to get them, they have to be seen doing stuff.
So have her go to the police department.
Maybe.
Furthermore, they never actually established. I'm assuming that Jim Gordon's not a thing anymore, since there's no reference to him.
Yeah, I'm actually curious as to why they don't bother actually, showing him. He doesn't have to be currently in the Gotham Police Department or the new Gotham Police Department, but why they just didn't have, him stopping by to check on her, kind of playing the guilt that he has over her being shot by the Joker, or, any of that.
Yeah. Like, I brought this up in our Harley Quinn Birds of Prey review that so often with a lot of these movies, I feel like they just created a character and then they decided to name and give attributions to it based on another comic book character in the most lazily way possible. This TV show screams of that. Even with Barbara Gordon being Oracle and being a computer genius and being in the wheelchair, so much of her character, I feel like it was written before they decided to make it Barbara Gordon.
Yeah. In the comic book, when you see Oracle, she's in a dark room with a blanket on her legs, she's wearing a sweater, and she's speaking into a headset at a computer. She doesn't do much of anything else until they reinvented her in the New 52.
Here, even when she's working the clock tower, she's wearing the most stylish outfits. And for the record, I know those were stylish outfits because when this show came out, I was 17, and I owned a lot of similar types of clothes to what those girls were wearing.
Let me ask you a question. Let's follow up on that. So I have you here. I'm going to take advantage of you.
You're lucky my husband's not here to hear that.
He can. The line of people coming to Tampa to kick me in the nuts forms to the left. Tell him take a number.
Yeah, I know. It's your son's in the front of the room, or in the front of it, right?
Oh my God! Every time I read him a story, he just jumps on my back and yells "horsey, horsey." This has become a nightly routine. Anyway, so you have these shows, and in a minute I'll try to do like a Google search to see if I can get a list of what shows were on the WB in the 2000s so that we have a clear picture of what they were shooting for when they came up with this. But obviously, Warner Brothers is always trying to make use of their DC IP. They've got it. As we would see later with the Arrowverse, they have all of this IP lying around, all of these great characters, but so little of the movies that I think they always get this itch to try to develop something for television. Try to make some money with this stuff since their films they don't have the greatest record on film, or they have they have a very weird record on film. They either like hit huge or miss entirely. It's really weird. But who do you think they were aiming this show at? Was this show, late teens, early 20s? Do you think it was made for the gals, made for a mixed gender audience, but like in the early, late teens, early 20s? What do you think?
I would definitely say late teens. And I'm guessing girls, even though, again, we argued on the Harley Quinn movie about how that movie, everyone says that movie is so feminist. And I pointed out, no, it's not. That's a crock of shit. This show stabs feminism in the back with a high-heeled boot.
Okay.
No, this is not a feminist show. It's driving this show drives feminism back about 20 decades. It's pathetic.
I didn't think it was that bad, but explain.
First of all, it kills me that a show that talks about, girl power and everything and how powerful these girls are, Helena Kyle is running around in a see-through trench coat. Absolutely no kind of armor protection. And I'd like to point out that 9 times out of 10, not only is she wearing something that totally shows off her chest, she also apparently has an allergy to anything that covers her midriff.
Yeah.
I have never seen somebody go out of their way to show their abs since Shania Twain's last tour.
Hey, look, not for nothing, but as a heterosexual male in his mid-40s, that was one of the highlights of the show. Is every time she's on screen, she's showing off that model midriff. Arrgh.
In fact, there's an episode where Dinah asks her why she doesn't wear a mask. And
I love what she says here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, she says, well, it's hard to breathe in, and it gets jostled around and fighting. And Barbara goes, yeah, and it makes your mascara run. And Helena doesn't argue. And Dinah goes, she goes, it's a vanity thing. And I just wanted to chuck something at the screen. I was like, the daughter of Batman is more concerned about her vanity.
That's not even the best line. There's something later on about the clothes that she wears, and she was like, just because you're fighting crime doesn't mean you can't be stylish.
And then there's that one where the guy who spits acid hits her in the shoulder, and she goes, do you know how hard it is to find clothes that look sexy? And that line actually just that doesn't even make sense. It's easy to find clothes that are sexy. Don't you mean hard to find clothes that you could fight in that look sexy? That alone I'd actually give maybe a smidgen of a point to, but just find clothes that look sexy. That makes no sense.
You know what's funny is the show's written by a woman. Like, if I'm looking at the Wikipedia page now, a pilot written by Leda Kalogridis, Leda Elizabeth Kalogridis, an American screenwriter and television and film producer. She's written scripts for Alexander 2004, so we're off to not a great start. Night Watch 2004, Pathfinder 2007, and Shutter Island 2010.
Did you see Shutter Island?
I did not.
Neither did I. That was the start of Leonardo DiCaprio getting constantly put into Martin Scorsese movies.
The second episode is written by her, or at least the story is written by her and Melissa Rosenberg, who's an American screenwriter. She has worked in both film and television, won a Peabody Award. She's been nominated for 2 Emmys and 2 Writers Guild of America awards. Eh? So, we're not talking fly-by-night here. The third episode, Pray for the Hunter, written by Adam Armis and Kay Foster, teleplay by Edward Kitsis and Adam Horowitz. All right. Episode 4, 3 Birds and a Baby, David H. Goodman and Julie Hess.
I believe that was the episode where you officially called or texted in me going, what the hell am I watching?
Episode 5, Melissa Rosenberg and Hans Tobison. And then it's a lot of the same folks that I've already mentioned for these next couple episodes.
Yeah, Sons of the Mother was where I just kind of checked out because we get Lori Loughlin making a cameo as the original Black Canary, who can do the canary cry, to which I just couldn't stop making I gave you up so you could have a better life. Yeah, and so you could actually get into a high-ranking college. I'm sorry, the jokes write themselves for that. And then I just died when you see Lori Loughlin doing the canary cry and she's whistling.
Yeah.
Did you catch that? She's got her lips pursed, which is I'm like, oh my god, you bastards couldn't even get the canary cry right.
Yeah, her as the original Black Canary, and this made me long for her days on Fuller House. Or Full House, for that matter.
Anyway.
Anyway.
I mean, long for the day she's going to be spending in prison.
Aw, you're so mean.
I'm sorry. It's too freaking obvious to make so many jokes about her, trying to connect with her daughter. It's like, I'm sorry. I thought I did the right thing. Yeah, the guy said he could get you into LSU.
So
or
tell
whatever
me,
the state is, or the college is.
This was clearly written by professional women. And it's not like, I can't imagine that there were meetings about the storyboarding for the show, in script writing where they were like, we know we have these professional women here, but write this for men. That can't have been what they were told. They had to have thought they were writing this for a female audience, or at least a mixed audience with a female bent. So how did we get to a show that appeals to neither? I think it would appeal to more men than girls just because from a visual sense, you've got Ashley Scott running around with her chest and midriff hanging out and some sexy pants. So there's visual eye candy and whatever. And I'm going to get to why you don't. I love the
episode when she confronts Lady Shiva, and it's like you really didn't anticipate not having a mask was going to be a bad thing.
And I'll get to why they can't keep the male audience in just a second, but I'm just curious. Do you have any insight, any thoughts? I mean, you can wax sort of poetic here if you want, just since I'm putting you on the spot. But I do. I want to kick this around. Like, it's one of the. There's a really great line in Family Guy that I saw recently where they do like sort of a mock the spinoff where the woman gets the be the lead in the series. They're mocking that, and then somebody criticizes it because these are pilots for a test audience, and a woman goes, the show is for women, but it seems like it's from a man's perspective. And of course, the guy goes, well, what if I told you to shut up? How about that?
That's a good. I do like that episode.
But that's kind of how this comes across. I don't know what you think about that, but this feels like it's two women going, okay, I don't like trying to figure out this seems to be what women want, right? Yeah, fashion, yeah.
One of the things I noticed about this is a trend that I saw a lot in adaptations, specifically comic book adaptations in this time period.
That they're garbage?
Besides that, studios were convinced that the balls to the wall, full-in adaptations that we had seen in the 80s and the early 90s were totally, just out. People didn't want to be hit with that. We didn't want our heroes in full costume. We didn't want to see, easily recognizable icons. This is the time when we wanted our Superman not flying around in a cape, but flying around in something that kind of looks like his regular outfit, but isn't his regular outfit. The idea was, when you're doing an adaptation in this time period, you add the tiniest drop of the original source material, and then everything else is what's cool and trending at the time period. People wanted, or the studios thought people wanted, to see everyday situations with just the barest hint of the adaptation in it. And that's what this series really reminds me of. Again, this feels like it was written to be a show about three women, one of them a teenager, and they decided at the last minute to add in a bit of touch about the Birds of Prey comic book.
So, I have a list here of shows that were on the WB around this time. In September of 2006, the WB closed. So,
and nothing of any value was lost.
But here is the collection of wonderfulness that occurs in the drama section, of which Birds of Prey was a part of, between 96 and 2006. Okay? So this is 2002 to 2003. So it's just at the tail end here, but still, just go with it. Seventh Heaven, Angel, which was a spin-off of Buffy the Vampire, Black Sash.
Never heard of it.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was from 97 to 2001. Charmed, which I actually watched some of, so 98 to 2006. Dawson's Creek, as we mentioned earlier, 98 to 2003. DC, which briefly ran in 2000. Dead Last, briefly ran in 2001. Everwood, 2002 to 2006. Felicity, which I was an extra on once, 98 to 2002. The Gilmore Girls, from 2000 to 2006, of which my wife is a huge fan.
I tried watching it, but my mom walked in and we both just started laughing because we were both going, in what universe does a mother and a daughter have that close of a relationship? In case you can't, I was close to my mom growing up.
Glory Days, Hyperion Bay, which I believe is the Mark Paul Gosselaar show. Yes, that's the one I was thinking of earlier. Jack and Bobby, Jack and Jill, Just Legal, The Bedford Diaries, The Mountain, One Tree Hill, Popular, Related, Rescue 77, Roswell, Safe Harbor, Savannah, Smallville, which ran from 2001 to 2006, Summerland, Supernatural. Tarzan actually had its own series for a little bit there. It lasted, looks like all of 2 months. 3, Vampire High, and Young Americans. So what does all of this tell us about what they were thinking with Birds of Prey when these are the kinds of shows they had in this time period?
Teenagers like them sexy.
So I'll tell you what the problem with this show is, aside from the obvious. Maybe you hook the kids, maybe you don't, and I think that's a separate conversation. But if you're trying to hook comic book fans, here's the one thing I've learned in the last 20 years of comic book adaptations. Hollywood doesn't think that comic book accuracy matters. Film and television journalism doesn't think comic book accuracy matters. But the fans seem to place it as the number one priority. The show should have the look and the feel, the costumes, the actors should look like they're comic book heroes and villains. And I would tell you that when you stray too far from the accepted comic book presentation, you
get the first trailer of Sonic the Hedgehog.
You get people turning away in droves. And then all you've got left is people willing to watch the show, because it fits into the age demographic. But what have you got left there? You've got some attractive people running around doing stuff, and quite frankly, not. And I'm just going to speak for certainly for the guys. They're not going to, if you're a guy who, looking for an action show, and you're not a comic book fan, there's nothing for you here. I mean, there would be a very small group of guys, I think, demographically, that would tune into this show just to see a bunch of hot women kung fu fighting. There's so many other places, especially from 2000 to 2006.
I'm pretty sure
you can find it elsewhere.
Pretty sure there's a YouTube channel somewhere that shows women in bikinis kung fu fighting. There has to be. Somebody has to have capitalized on that by now.
That's one of my favorite scenes in not Rum Punch, but the movie that was the Rum Punch Jackie Brown, with women in bikinis shooting guns. It's fantastic. Have you ever seen it?
Believe it or not, I have not.
Oh, you must watch Jackie Brown with your husband one day. It's fantastic. We did it on trial for it last year, around the same time as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Anyway, there's a scene where Samuel L. Jackson is watching home videos of or VHSs of women in bikinis firing automatic weapons. It's perfect.
Because of course there is.
Of course there is. So why do you think?
Like I said, these characters just have the most basic of hints of their adaptation. I mean, the only hint that we get of Harley Quinn even remotely similar to what we've seen in the comic books is she wears red and black.
Yeah.
And the final episode, she's wearing a red sweater with the chest cut out with black diamonds. So it has the most barest hint of a Harlequin costume.
Yep. You wonder why they lost their audience.
And again, this is not Harley Quinn. So
you lose the comic book fans because this is in no way comic book accurate. You lose people interested in just genuine drama because you don't have likable characters doing anything of interest.
You lose people who are interested in the craft because even if you do overlook the horrible CGI, this show has some pretty terrible editing. I mean, how many fight scenes did they suddenly switch to that skipped frames edit to try to give it that weird blurry vision style?
So they made, and this is a good transition point to talk about this character, they made Dinah Lance a teenager to try to hook the young gals. So, if you're not getting anything from the two elder gals, if whatever reason they don't hook you, she's supposed to hook you. You see yourself in her. And a couple of problems with this. I've already talked about she's not enough like the actual character for any male and or comic book fan to have given a shit. So all you've got left is teenage girls, and I don't know about you, but I would imagine even as a teenage girl, I don't find that girl likable.
No.
certainly as a middle-aged man watching this for craft purposes, and just the actress herself, I think, is trying, but the character is written so flat and so whiny and unlikable, and so much of the show is dedicated to her that it drags the whole thing down.
Like I said, she constantly bobbles her head while she talks. In the second episode, we see her, throwing a batarang. Oh my God, those batarangs. Those giant, thick, cheap as hell batarangs. What were those?
Frisbees?
They look like Frisbees. They really do. I was just like, how is that supposed to be a weapon? Lord.
Well, it's big enough and heavy enough. If you've been hit in the head with a plate?
Yeah, but they're supposed to be able to do... I mean, you're a Batman fan. You know what all the batarangs are supposed to do. Those things are useless. They're too big and thick. And for the record, it makes no sense to call them batarangs, because I'd like to point out that even Nightwing had his own version called wingdings. So I'm sort of going, you could call them something else, because they're no longer being held by a bat.
Birds of prey discs.
There you go. But yeah, I just love that we cut to Dinah thrown around, and she's wearing a peasant blouse with super baggy sleeves. I'm like, how do you throw up one of those things with sleeves like that? I'm wearing a sweater right now with sleeves like that. Not possible.
Yeah. So we talked about Hejna, Kyle, Ashley Scott. We talked about Batgirl. Batgirl. Barbara Gordon, which I do love the scenes where she's where they put this magical mechanism on her back and she's able to walk temporarily. In fact, she's able to fight by the end of it because she's made improvements on it, you see.
Oh, of course.
I almost wish there'd been a second season where they utterly gave up on her being Oracle and just said, she can fight now. It's fine. Her spine's healed.
And now I do love how you pointed out that in the comics, Oracle always was just dressed comfortably. And there's a scene of her rolling around in her wheelchair. And she's wearing stiletto boots and this skin-tight turtleneck sleeveless top, which, again, I wore those all the time when I was in high school. Those were so stylish. And I'm just going, no, I don't think she would actually get that dressed up.
Let's talk about Mia Sara real quick. As we talked about her a little bit, but let's finish this up so we make sure we cover the main cast here. As Harleen Quinzel / Harley Quinn. I feel like in the beginning they didn't give her a whole lot. Again, they were supposed to be like this big reveal that she was, using Helena for information, and that this was all a giant revenge plot to get back at these people for catching the Joker, I guess, or Batman catching the Joker.
Again, I'm convinced that they just wrote up this character, this plan for her to get a revenge, and then they later said, well, we should probably name her after someone from the comics. Well, Harley Quinn's popular. Yeah, let's make her Harley Quinn. Sorry. So, again, every character on this series feels like, they got ready to shoot, and then they suddenly realized we need to give them a name from the comics.
Yeah.
Which I'm officially going to start calling this the Cassandra Cain effect.
So other than, just real quick, any other thoughts on Harley Quinn? I said it by the end of it, she just loses her mind, and the actor is just like, I'm going to have fun with this because fuck it, we're done. But I think along the way, occasionally when she's doing her bad guy stuff, she's sort of over the top, and I think even a couple of times it's sort of like an ode to the way Schumacher and Burton shot some of the scenes in those movies. They would actually tilt the camera in certain situations, which I laughed at, especially at the end where they went full on like Batman 66 with how they shot that.
I've already blocked most of this series out of my brain. I will say this, though, if we do have to add any notes of positivity. I have promised to give this DVD set to a girlfriend of mine. We have the squeak commentary coming in, sorry. I've promised to give the DVD set to a girlfriend of mine. She's currently in the hospital being treated for a congenital heart defect. Went to visit her the other day and was talking about the review. She has openly admitted that she thinks the show is garbage, but she loves it.
Why?
Well, she said she's got rose-tinted nostalgia goggles on. So, and let's face it, we all have something that we saw when we were younger that we look back on and admit, oh my God, that's garbage. But I watched it at a time when I didn't know it was garbage, so I'm able to block out this part of my brain that says, what the hell is wrong with you?
Let me jump in here and say there was a conversation that took place privately amongst a group of us through Facebook Messenger, and there was a comment made, and it was made about a specific person, but I think this is a lot of people, most people, as a matter of fact, that if they like it, and this came up during our Mandalorian discussion too, if I'm being honest, but if they like it, then to them, and they'll defend it to their dying breath, that they say, you know, quality wise, it's good, and if they didn't like it, quality wise, it's bad. And as much as stuff like that drives me up the wall, I think I'm in the minority. I think for a lot of people, if they saw it 20 years ago and they liked it at the time because they were 20 years younger and their taste was different, as you said, they'll sort of exalt it to a higher place than realistically it should be, because it had meaning to them, you know, in a different part of their life, which is fine. Not everybody here is a professional critic, nor should they be, and I think it's okay to accept that. So I'm okay with your friend liking this show because she was a kid when she liked it, and it's fine. It's all good.
She did point out one thing, though. Okay, I'm going into another room. Hang on. Eddie, you're adorable, but we can only handle the squeak so much. Sorry, folks. No, when I was visiting her in the hospital, we sat down and we talked about it. And yeah, like I said, she acknowledged the acting is hilariously bad. The CGI is horrendous. The editing is piss poor. But she did point out something. She looked at me and said, but you can't argue. You can see the building blocks of the Arrowverse and future DC WB series in this show.
This is a classic example of don't be afraid to fail if you're willing to learn from your mistakes. Because I don't think Arrow and Flash and Supergirl would be as good as they are, and some would argue they're not good at all, but those people are rednecks and communists.
And
no.
I've said it before. The only thing I hated about Arrow was that one episode in the first season when they brought out the Royal Flush Gang.
Yeah.
that just kind of that hurt. That really hurt.
But you know, I think if you're willing as producers and television executives to kind of learn from stuff you've tried before and failed and say, okay, this time we're going to do it differently, I'm kind of okay with it. Like, I'm okay. You know, it's funny because clearly they had a success with Smallville, and they looked around and said, well, what else can we make a show of? How about a show for chicks? Okay, well, what do we got in the DC universe that we can do with chicks? And don't say Wonder Woman. We'd like to save that for the big screen. Okay? You know, and they said, okay, well, what do we got in the Batman universe that isn't Batman? Which seems to be, I think it was Robert Winfrey who said that there's two buttons at the Warner Brothers studios. One says Batman, the other one says Scooby-Doo.
No, that's my joke.
Oh, that's your joke? Okay.
That was my joke.
So I'm going to read a couple of these to you. These are, now we normally do this on Damn You Hollywood, but I think I think it's fun to kind of look back and see some of these criticisms, relatively recent criticisms of this show, as people like us are using this opportunity for the film being out to go back and look at, as we were saying, something that they tried, failed, and years later would try again, but different with the Arrowverse. So a couple of comments here, a couple of criticisms from Rotten Tomatoes. It's chock. I'm not going to read who these people are. It doesn't matter. It's chock full of corny dialogue and some pretty weak plot devices. You're not wrong.
For the record, I do need to ask, the episode with the crawler, I still have absolutely no idea where they were going with that.
Yeah, I don't think they knew.
Yeah, it's like, so he's possessed and he can change he's a shapeshifter? I don't know. That twist made no sense. I still have no idea what the hell's going on there.
It's as if the show doesn't exactly know what it wants to be. It tries to be witty and caustic and then to be serious and fails at both.
Yeah.
If you want some idea of just how difficult it is to make a comic book movie style action dovetail with heartfelt emotionalism, tune in to Birds of Prey, a migraine-inducingly complex superhero saga.
Yeah.
This one kind of sums up my experience. I got completely bored with the story by the 4th or 5th episode, and the standalone elements in each episode aren't interesting enough to keep me interested in the show.
Honestly, the only thing that made me not totally regret buying the DVD was that the DVD set also comes with the complete Gotham Girls web series. The web animation that came on at the same time. But it's hilarious because as good as those little web shorts are, they were made in early 2000s Flash, and they clearly haven't been cleaned up. So when you put it on an HD TV, it's got that double overlay look from early Flash animation, and it looks so crappy. But still, it's classic Bruce Timm Baldini animation with the characters of Catwoman, Batgirl, Harley, Poison Ivy, Zatanna. And that was kind of enjoyable.
The last one here, and I will tell you who says this. Marianne Johansson of Flick Philosopher. Like, oh my god, chick superheroes. And they are, like, as totally dull and shallow as chick superheroes almost always are in Hollywood's limited imagination.
Someone's got their own soapbox.
Yeah, it's the reason why she gets brought up a lot on Damn You Hollywood.
Yeah, no, she's not wrong about this series, but you know me, I'm not going to go out there on that whole Hollywood doesn't know how to make female superheroes. I'm calling bullshit on that. The series just sucks. And yes, it is like chick superheroes in the worst way possible. But the truth is that if you watch Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, Arrowverse, Flash, they are able to do good, complex, feminist, female superheroes.
Supergirl's great. I'm twisting your arm and making you talk about the series this summer after this particular season ends, but I've enjoyed Supergirl from the beginning. I know there are a handful of people in our personal circle who think the show sucks, but they think everything sucks, so who cares? But I've enjoyed Supergirl from the beginning, and I think it's only gotten better since they kicked it off CBS and onto the CW and seemingly got out of the producer's way and just let them do what they wanted to do. There's almost a jarring shift from season 1 to season 2 in terms of creativity and not feeling so networky. Overall, back to Birds of Prey. Here's to shut the book on this. The last thing I'm going to say about it, my last kind of criticism is, if part of the reason why, just as an example, Arrow worked as well as it did was not only did they give you an interesting Arrow, and the writing seems to have matured and gotten better by the time they got there from where they started with shows like this, but they also drew a lot from the comic books. So even if you were like, it's Batman with a bow and arrow, boo. In the first season alone, you got to see Huntress, you got to see a bunch of various villains and other characters from both Batman and the Green Arrow universe in the comics. And they really went out of their way to, as much as they could with a television budget in that time, try to give you the look and feel of those characters. Like, again, they learned from their mistakes, and they were like, just make the comic book happen live action. Don't Don't try to do anything fancy with this. Just give the people what they want, and voila, it was successful. It's one of the things I love about the Flash now is they started out with one kind of costume, and then they gave him one later on that was more comic book accurate, and then they made a joke about that, which I thought was funny. But this one, there's one character that shows up at the very end, Clayface, and the rest of and then Lady Shiva for a little bit there. But the rest of it, like, they're monsters of the week. None of these that I could tell were from DC Comics.
And for the record, again, that was so not Clayface. Clayface is a lot more than just a shapeshifter.
Yeah, I don't also know why they made him whatever version of Southern or Cajun that was supposed to be. But
did you know that the same actor who played Marvin Nash, the cop who got his ear cut off in Reservoir Dogs?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I actually Googled because I was same thing. I was like, what the hell accent is that? Who played this guy?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll give you a minute to comment on that, but I think they missed an opportunity here to, if nothing else was going to work, but at least you got to see some of your favorite characters from the comic books come to life. They did none of that, and I think that was the nail in the coffin for this show.
Yeah. Even if they did do it, there was the risk of them going overboard like they've done with Gotham, which quickly turned from the early days into that scene from the Avengers where Captain America goes, I understood that reference.
So my last question to you, and then we're going to close up shop for the night. Why do you think Smallville succeeded and Birds of Prey cratered on Impact?
God help me. I never saw Smallville.
Okay, that was a bad question to ask you then.
No, everyone tells me I need to go back and watch it, and I agree. You got to remember, I did not get into comics until college.
Mm-hmm.
So Smallville, Birds of Prey, all the stuff that aired in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was not in the demographic yet.
This thing ran for 10 seasons, half of which were on the WB, and then it kept going on the CW. And it ran from 2001 to 2010, averaging about 20 episodes per season. It's on my list, but that is a large pill to swallow.
Oh, tell me about it. One of my best guy friends constantly tells me about how I need to see it, and he is a huge comic book nerd. He was actually the first one who introduced me to the Blackest Night series with Green Lantern.
So just quick, if you look at just the list of characters that are on this, they really did throw as many from the comic book as they could here. I think this is also, I think they ended up getting Birds of Prey to series, obviously because we're talking about it, but they also tried kind of stemming out of Smallville an Aquaman pilot, which Ronnie and I talked about a couple of years ago, which never got past the pilot. And
wasn't the actor who played Aquaman in that, didn't he go on to play Hawk in Teen Titans?
Maybe.
I remember when we talked about the first season of Teen Titans, we looked it up. The actor who played Hawk from Hawk and Dove, he was either Green Arrow from Smallville or he was Aquaman from Smallville. I remember us laughing about how they were just recasting heroes.
No, it's not him.
Okay.
He was actually on This Is Us.
Oh, get out. But for the record, I do know enough about Smallville. I think part of it is that Smallville embraced its symbolism and its characters with pride. They actually started from the beginning writing these characters. This was not, okay, he's just, this handsy little heartthrob. Oh, and by the way, he's also Superman. No, this was Clark Kent from the beginning. This was Lex Luthor from the beginning. I feel that they actually went in with a better idea of what they wanted these characters to do, rather than just trying to play to a focus group and then add in that tiniest touch of an adaptation afterwards, like we have seen, unfortunately, in so many other adaptations.
It is it really is, and I think it deserves research and study, which you're not going to get from me, but I think somebody else should take this on as a project. How the production team was able to strike gold and to go have a 10-year run, you do 20 episodes apiece, you struck gold. That's a hell of an achievement.
Enough that Tom Welling's cameo in Crisis on Infinite Earths was apparently the biggest rejoicing of Superman fans across the globe.
Until he Superman 2'd and gave up his powers, and everyone was like, God fucking damn it. Fucking hate you, CW. So the big reaction to that, by the way. Anyway, it deserves some study. Some college kid, if you're listening to this, do your thesis paper on this. How, when you have similar production teams at the same time in space, on the same network, how do you develop something that you hit a home run with, like Smallville, and utterly strike out with Birds of Prey, and not for nothing, your pilot for Aquaman, because you did it twice. Like,
besides also the fact that they clearly knew when to save their CGI budget.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, that's the other thing. Save the CGI budget for when it actually matters. Do not try to stretch it over the craptastic landscape and whatever the hell you call the canary cry.
I'm going to give you the last word here. Birds of Prey. If you're walking into work, I know you have your own company and you work from home, but pretend for a moment, you're walking into the office, and if you're like me, you're just trying to get to your desk because you've got shit to do. But the same guy who likes to talk TV with you because he likes you and he likes to talk about TV with you because you see all the things, comes to your desk and he's like, "What'd you think of Birds of Prey?" What do you tell him?
First of all, you act like I don't get people who do that at the comic book conventions.
Yeah, but you're there to talk to people and sell them and be all charismatic. I'm talking about when you're trying to get to your desk and do some work and the person won't leave you alone, so you got to come up with 50 words or less here.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any idea how many times I'm trying to work on a sale and I have somebody at the corner who's trying to flirt with me, bringing up every single comic book character known to man, and I'm trying to politely tell them, "Yeah, that's interesting. Now, will you either buy something or go away?"
She said on a public broadcast.
Anyone who works sales will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Sell this show. Go.
Birds of Prey was an exercise in what not to do. It was a poorly made show that was clearly trying to capitalize on a focus group-minded demographic. It was poorly acted and poorly edited, but you do see the stepping stones in it that brought us to the Arrowverse and the CW superhero series that we know and love. So if anything, sometimes, knowing what you don't want and knowing what doesn't work can be just as important, if not more important, than knowing what you don't want and what you do want and what does work.
So there you go. There's the value in watching Birds of Prey, if not for the viewer at home, then for the people currently working on dramatic television. But get the DVD so you can see the Gotham Girls web series. Again, that's a lot more enjoyable. Watch Birds of Prey so you know what not to do with your comic book properties. All right. And speaking of you and your jewelry and your sales and your comic book conventions, what do you got on your agenda? My agenda? Tell me about your gender. Oh, God, we're not going that woke. Well, you just get on with it. Sorry, you're the one who keeps opening up the door for these jokes. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, we're currently in our off season, but that is almost over. Planet Comic-Con here in Kansas City is coming up in a few weeks. So excited to be getting back to the con season and back to my craft. We're going to have a ton of amazing guests there, including Brandon Routh and John Cleese. Oh my God, we are getting a frickin' python. I'm so excited. Until then, we, of course, have our stores. We have our Etsy and Handmade at Amazon store. We are also currently selling jewelry at Pawn and Pint and Level 1 here in Kansas City. I am currently working on a list of other stores in Missouri and Kansas that we are hopefully going to be selling our stuff to as well. That was the plan earlier in the year, but we realized that nobody wanted to talk buying stuff right after Christmas, so we took hiatus. And we are going back to that plan now that people are ready to start restocking their stores a little bit more, if you will. And, of course, you can always find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Under Duress Twitter. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. All right. And we, like as I said before, we did this show because we had just reviewed Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous.
And Mark still owes me a churro.
And the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. So we can finally close the book on this and never speak of the shortcut again.
Wait, there's no Robert here. How are we still doing Simpsons references?
And we also did the comic book, the Slapdash, just smashed together one issue apiece of all the characters in the movie. Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey trade paperback. The podcast was fun. The book, meh. Myself,
pretty much all of our Birds of Prey reviews now have been like, what was the content about? Crap. Was the review fun? Yeah, you got to hear us all break.
Pat and I did the next chapter in our boxing history podcast. We talked about Floyd Patterson and Sonny Liston and their intertwined history together. Myself and Jesse reviewed the latest Sepultura album, Quadra. Don't have much going on tomorrow. We might do some boxing, we might not, but either way, it's Valentine's Day, and I'm spending it with my family in an oh-so-romantic way as I take them to go see Sonic the Hedgehog. However, there will be some boxing this Saturday as John Warren and I do commentary for Caleb Plant versus Vincent Feigenbutts. Feigenbutts, I tell you. Feigenbutts for you, Feigenbutts for everybody.
He did the same joke when he announced this episode when we reviewed the Harley Quinn movie, folks. He just likes Feigenbutts.
You get the Feigenbutts out of here. I've had enough of your Feigenbutts. And next week, Jesse and I will review the comic book story Sonic Genesis. The Podsmen are back to talk about NXT TakeOver Portland. Jesse and I will review the Hollywood Undead new... what's the name of this album? New Empire Volume 1. And then on a special Thursday airing of the Damn You Hollywood, we will be talking about Sonic the Hedgehog. Myself, Pat Mullen, and John War will be doing a preview of the fight of the century, ladies and gentlemen, Wilder Fury 2. And then Saturday night, Wilder Fury 2. We'll be doing a watch-along for that after I get back from Mean Girls the Musical.
The things he does for his wife and daughter.
It's just my wife in that particular case. But if you've enjoyed the Feigenbutts out of one Alexis Hejna, she'll be back, not just for Sonic the Hedgehog, but also we'll be doing another TV party in 2 weeks from tonight. We'll be doing Green Eggs and Ham, the first season on Netflix.
Actually excited to talk about that.
Yes, that same day, by the way, Jesse and I, it's already in the can. It'll come up that day, early in the day. We did a source material on the Green Eggs and Ham book. I read him the story.
I need to listen to this when it's put out.
You should listen to all my podcasts. They're fantastic, even the ones you're not on. They're all amazing.
You think I have that kind of time?
You sit at home and make jewelry. What else are you doing while you're making jewelry? What are you listening to? CNN?
Game Grumps.
Ugh. All right.
Trust me, with the way the world is, if I was listening to CNN while I was working all day, I probably would have killed myself by now.
All right. So, thank you, Alexis, for joining me on this TV party tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and if you haven't, subscribe to our podcast on any number of podcast apps. If you haven't had the opportunity to leave us a star review of some sort, a comment perhaps, you can check us out on the W2M network, or W2M.net, I believe it is the website. Until then, be well, be safe, and behave.